Hello, everyone. This is Sudhansu Pati. I'm co-founder and chief technology officer of SPJ Solutions. This presentation, you will find very helpful information about NSX-V to NSX-T migration. When we are talking about NSX-V to T migrations, we are thinking about what type of approach I should take, what type of tools I should be using, what are the different methods available to us, what are the different methods that have been tested and proven in the industry so that I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So let's get to the details of this V to T migration, tools, approaches, lessons learned, and the real-time experience. I also recommend you to register to the VMworld 2021 session on V2T migration. Please take a look at the content for session 1244 and 1208. Those are very specific to V2T migration, and they will have customer case studies there. Also, if you have access to VMworld 2020, session 1590 has wealth of information on the V2T migration approach, tool sets, lessons learned, and real-life use cases, as well as the remediations from different lessons learned. Take a look at that ebook. This is published by VMware. It's called Migrate to VMware NSX-T Data Center. A very useful book because it has various chapters authored by really great and sharp people. So I have authored 2 chapters where I highlighted real-world implementation use case of V2T migration. Chapter 2 is an example of a single DC micro-segmentation migration of a small environment. And chapter 3 is about a micro-segmentation and network virtualization and load balancer migration of a large environment. So you will get a sense of how a small migration was done, how a large migration was done, how these 2 different flavors of customer approach this migration, and how they organize their various activities, including change management, resources, planning, coordinating with different teams, updating the different systems, communications, and what type of technology was utilized, and what type of lessons were learned, and how they were remediated. Very helpful information. It's a free ebook for you to download and consume the information. I do talk about a migration process. Migration process, individual steps may be unique to the environment. But when we are thinking about NSX-V to NSX-T migration, whether it's a lift and shift migration, where you are taking your existing assets of NSX-V environment and migrating to a new infrastructure, which is new ESXi host, or you are just migrating in place from NSX-V to NSX-T, we still have to have a coordinated set of processes that are designed for success. These 5 steps that you're seeing on the screen, you will also see them on the VMworld's presentation last year's session 1590. Why these are important? Because before we start our migration, we analyze the NSX-V environment, which is our first step in the migration process. We understand what type of risks we are facing. We understand what type of organizational challenges we are going to have. We understand what type of outages will be needed and what type of constraints I have in the environment. The second step is, can I really test some of these migrations externally to another environment? So that's a test conversion of V to T. Third step is to migrate your micro-segmentation plane and the control plane. 4th step is the V to T migration, but coexistence. Some customers are not able to migrate everything at once. So they will have the V and T environment coexist for some time. Could be a month, could be a few weeks, could be just a week, could be a few days, could be 6 months. But the coexistence does require a different strategy to ensure that your NSX-V and NSX-T, both environments, are functional as if just the NSX-V environment was functional. Then, of course, your final step is you're migrating all your virtual machines, ESXi host, your VDS, NVDS, those steps. One important thing we have made available to our customer is the first 2 steps. We have listened and learned from our customers that they want to understand the risk of migration. They want to get all the unknowns, understand all the unknowns and try to translate them to knowns. So we have made this process from our SPJ solutions no cost to the customer, so they can fully take advantage of a pre-migration analysis of the environment without having to get into any kind of procurement or contracts. So what does migration really mean for me? When I have NSX-V environment, I'm going to NSX-T environment. What are the things that need to be migrated? You can see this list is a pretty extensive list, and cITopus, the tool I'm going to describe today and show you an overview of that as well, performs the migration of all of those components. So the first thing when you get into NSX-V to NSX-T migration, one of the things I hear from the customers and learn and listen from them, the NSX-T architecture is vastly different from NSX-V architecture. The management plane architecture is different. Control plane architecture is different. The way the routers are configured is different. So how do we make sure that my NSX-T architecture is correct and it complies and it's parallel with what I'm doing in NSX-V? So this particular task is the first task you will have to do. So essentially, you'll have to install and configure NSX-T environment based on your target architecture, which could be a multi-site or federated architecture. To make things absolutely simple and easy for you, cITopus single-click install utility performs this task completely automated, where time can be spent manually a week or two. The cITopus single-click NSX install utility takes all this information into an Excel spreadsheet. I press one button, and all of the NSX components are deployed into multiple data centers, including global managers, local managers, edge clusters, RTAP, T0, T1 segments, VIBs, all of them are done in a single button click. So another key important thing that we have to think about when we are migrating from V to T is how do I design and configure my edge cluster? You may have OSPF or BGP or other configurations, edge services. Now, those things are a little bit different in NSX-T, and the architecture is different. So when you design your edge cluster, it has to be based on NSX-V, NSX-T best practices, as well as it has to make sure that all of the components you have on the ESGs and UDLRs can be properly translated to NSX-T. cITopus Edge Cluster Deployment Utility does just that. It's a point-and-click self-guided utility that allows you to drag to select various options from a wizard and deploy the correct architecture of edge cluster, whether it's a bridge deployment or it's a routing deployment or it's a multi-site, or if it is a federated deployment, the correct architecture based on NSX-T best practices and based on how you can translate from NSX-V to NSX-T. Similarly, this is a very important thing. AVI is a go-forward migration, basically load balancing solution from VMware. Both NSX-V and NSX-T load balancers will eventually be phased out or decommissioned and replaced by AVI. Customers who have NSX-V today, they have some flavor of a AVI license available to them. cITopus AVI deployment utility deploys all of the AVI configurations and integrates with the vCenter and NSX-T environment, creates that architecture for you, and also it migrates the load balancer from NSX-V HA proxy to the AVI service groups and service engines. So these are some of the things, tools that you need to be thinking about, and automations you need to be thinking about when you're thinking of migrating your components from NSX-V to NSX-T. Now let's get into some migrations. So the first use case I'm going to present is lift and shift migration. What is involved and entailed in that process? Let's understand it. So in the lift and shift migration, I have two ways of doing it. Maybe I can just, first thing I have to do is install my NSX managers, and cITopus single-click install will do that for you. After that is done, I can deploy one or more edge clusters depending on the configurations I have, routing or bridging or RTAP or multi-site. So edge cluster can consist of active standby edge nodes. So that is done by cITopus, fully automated. And the next thing I need to do is I have to make sure that I configure my ESXi edges, ESXi host with NSX-T. That process is called the host preparation process. And this is a use case where you have like for like hardware in the new environment, NSX-T environment, to perform the lift and shift migration. cITopus install utility will install all the VIBs to all ESXi hosts in the NSX-T environment simultaneously. After that is done, you can see NSX is fully loaded into the ESXi host. Now we can have all these virtual machines migrated from NSX-V to NSX-T. A lot of these migrations will not cause any outage of those virtual machines. Some migrations will cause an outage, for example, a gateway migration. So when the virtual machines are migrated, the virtual machines will be converted from NSX-V to NSX-T. And as they are migrated, cITopus will ensure that the NSX-V and NSX-T environments are inconsistent. For example, the gateways are decommissioned from NSX-V and commissioned in NSX-T so that the communication between NSX-V and NSX-T is still intact and the environment is not broken. So this is very important when you're performing lift and shift migration, because you want to keep this environment up and running for some time with V and T coexisting, and you want both this environment to function properly, as allowing you the time to migrate your virtual machines from V to T. That's how lift and shift migration works, and most of this work is fully automated using cITopus. But that is not a proper approach for most of our customers, because what if you have 80 ESXi hosts? Are you going to purchase another 80 hosts to do a like-for-like migration from V to T? Probably not. What you may do is you may purchase some initial hardware or get some hardware from existing clusters and then migrate your VMs and then gradually increase that NSX-T environment. That is the most common lift and shift migration that we have experienced in the field. So how does that work? Yes, you still have to install your NSX managers. You still have to deploy your edge clusters, deploying your requirements. But when it comes to ESXi host, you uninstall NSX-V from an existing ESXi host of a cluster, and you use that ESXi host to form the new cluster in NSX-T. cITopus will do that migration for you. There is no manual work involved here. So once the NSX-T is installed on that ESXi host, now I have NSX management plane installed, and I have edge control plane installed. I also have ESXi host installed where I can actually migrate the virtual machines. So my NSX-T configurations can be created. This is all fully automated. Don't have to do anything manually. And cITopus VM migration utility will migrate the virtual machines from NSX-V to NSX-T in most of the cases with no downtime. As I said, the only downtime you'll ever experience is where you're migrating V to T is you have to migrate the universal logical DLR or the DLR logical interfaces from V to T, a very brief outage. If you go to YouTube and look for cITopus, I have plenty of demonstrations of the product and how it provides virtual machine migration with absolutely minimum outage as possible. So once some virtual machines are migrated, now it is what cITopus will do. It'll uninstall NSX-V from the next ESXi host because you have some excess capacity there, and then that ESXi host can be brought into the NSX-T environment, and additional VMs can be migrated. So this process continues until all of the virtual machines are gracefully migrated with as little outage as possible from NSX-V to NSX-T. This is what most customers use today for NSX-V to T and migration using lift and shift migration approach. They will have some initial hardware, they will create some initial clusters, but they will slowly migrate their VMs from V to T so that they don't have to purchase like-for-like hardware in NSX-T environment. So let's talk about some other use cases. In-place migration. So what is an in-place migration? In-place migration means I have absolutely no ability to form a new cluster where I can migrate my virtual machines from V to T. I have no ability to do that. And there are so many reasons for that. Some customers are unable to do so. And in that case, what we are saying is you actually have to take your existing ESXi host, because keep in mind, NSX-V and NSX-T VIBs, VMware installation bundles cannot be installed at the same time. They cannot be existing at the same time. One has to be uninstalled for the other one to be installed. So we are repurposing the same ESXi host for NSX-T. So how does that migration look like? So let's go through that. What cITopus will do for you, it will basically remove the NSX-V components, which basically are the VIBs and any other extensions that you may have deployed there, NetX extensions or other things, from each ESXi host. And then it will deploy all of your NSX-T VIBs, and then the virtual machines network level adapters will be changed and new configurations will be created in NSX-T. This process is very seamless. The customers don't have to do anything other than following the wizard and clicking migrate, and cITopus will do all that for you. So this is one approach where all NSX-V enabled ESXi hosts are put in a maintenance mode, and they are migrated to NSX-T. But sometimes customers want something a little bit different. They want to minimize the outage. So that is the use case number 2. And this has been becoming more and more popular because we are looking for as little outage as possible on the environment on the ESXi host. So how does that look like? How does use case 2 different from use case 1? And here's what you can experience. So we can migrate using cITopus, remove NSX-V from one ESXi host, but I don't have to wait for all the ESXi hosts to be converted to NSX, to be uninstalled from NSX-V to create the NSX-T cluster. Instead, what I can do is I can deploy the VIBs specific to that ESXi host. Just for one host, I can do that using cITopus. And then I can convert some of this VM level network adapter from V to T. So that way I have some VMs in the V, some VMs in the T, but I have some hosts in the ESXi host on the NSX-V cluster. They're just gone from V to T at the host level. So this process is available. You will get some, this is a little bit of a difficult process because you may get some alarms and things like that from NSX-V stating that one of the hosts does not have V and things like that. But that's understandable because you're going through this migration process. So this is another use case where we are taking one host at a time, migrating our virtual machines from V to T to experience as little outage as possible, automating the entire process along the way so that no manual work is involved, and also minimizing the risk completely here. So once the process is completed, I have all of my ESXi host converted from NSX-V enabled VIBs to NSX-T enabled VIBs. And all of my VMs are configured with NSX-T networking, and they are connected to NSX-T specific routers and switches. You might ask, when the virtual machines are on V and the virtual machines are on T, how does the communication work between the virtual machines? Very easy. The way it will work, because NSX-T, V and T, they both offer dynamic routing and static routing. But if you're using dynamic routing, you will have prefix level advertisement that's available in both networks, V and T. And actually NSX-T networking is a little bit more advanced than NSX-V networking with additional capabilities. So you would have no problem in providing north-south routing from V environment to T environment through your physical switch. And this has been done many, many times in the migration use cases. So let me share with you the NSX-V environment with this screen. And let me share with you the tool. So if you are not familiar with cITopus, it is a day 0, day 1, and day 2 management tool for NSX-V, NSX-T, STDC, which is a VCF, and also cloud, which is VMC. So when you point your environment to a specific environment, such as NSX-V, I have the NSX-V primary, secondary, you can instantly see all kinds of diagramming and reports produced from that NSX-V environment. So I have data center 1, data center 2, two NSX-V environments. They're joined together, primary, secondary, and this layer 2 diagram is just automatically built by cITopus. So is the layer 3 diagram and the micro-segmentation diagrams. So all of the micro-segmentation configurations are configured with the nice diagrams where you can see the global objects, universal objects. I have a cluster view design diagram that displays all of the clusters where NSX-V and NSX-T components and other VMware components are placed. Cluster placement is extremely important for NSX because we need to know where the managers are deployed, where the edges are deployed, and how they are configured with underlying switches, which is the distributor switch or underlying NSX-T segments. Before performing any migrations, one of the things you can do is you can actually create a report of V to T's migration specific report. So what cITopus does is it creates all those reports and combines everything to a zip file, and you can use that zip file to open it to get all the Excel exports and understand the migration specific components that will be involved. So I'll show you an example of that. So these many reports are created. Each report is absolutely critical for performing these migrations, especially experts like ourselves, to understand what the environment is and how this migration affects their environment. For example, if I just click the VM migration data report, it's an Excel spreadsheet, and that opens up the virtual machine specific migration that is available. So I will share the screen now. Okay. So you can probably see the screen. So this is the report that is produced for each cluster. That's very helpful to understand how the migration from NSX-V to NSX-T will impact the networking of the virtual machines. That's just one example of it. So anyway, so I won't go through all the reports here. So let me go through another scenario. When I run the pre-migration analyzer, I also have the ability to perform something called the V2T Micro-Segmentation simulator. Simulator means just as what cITopus will do to migrate your environment to V2T, the same engine that is used for migration is used as a simulator where the customer does not even have NSX-T installed in their environment. The goal here is to see how this migration will impact their environment, what changes will happen, and what are those changes, and how these changes will architecturally impact. What type of components that the environment has that is additional manual work is needed. What type of components that cITopus or any other tool just simply cannot convert because those components are not available in NSX-T. So most customers are very interested in this because this helps us to identify the impact of their migration to their environment. So these reports are very helpful. Once you start the migration, what you can do is you can export all of your micro-segmentation. So this demonstrations I'm doing today is specifically for micro-segmentation. But in a future use case, I can show you the network virtualization, or you can follow me on the YouTube or LinkedIn to learn the network virtualization migration. So this is micro-segmentation migration. So cITopus automatically pick the primary and secondary NSX managers. And essentially what happens is when I'm performing a lift and shift migration of micro-segmentation, all of my NSX objects, my rules, my security groups, my IP sets, all of them are actually exported to a single file. And that single export file can be re-imported into another cITopus environment to test the conversion from V to T. So, and it's a 3-factor authentication file. The first factor is cITopus, second factor is an encryption that we utilize, and third factor is the password I just entered. So a new file is created, as you can see. So when I go to the NSX-T environment, I can import that particular file to convert from NSX-V to NSX-T. So in this case, I can perform the import. So I pointed my environment to NSX-T, and let's load the NSX-T environment to get the latest information from vCenter, NSX, and if you have VCF, it'll get it from VCF too, but in my case, I don't have the VCF environment. So you could come in and perform the import to import the migrations, import the NSX-V components into NSX-T. So let's look into this NSX-T environment a little bit closely before we migrate this. So I'm in the NSX-T manager at this point. So the NSX-T manager, I can see my components that are already in there. So I have some previously deployed use cases. So in that case, what cITopus does is it actually deploys your services, it deploys your security groups, it deploys your security. So I have a previously deployed environment in the NSX-T. And I will show you a quick feature. It's called the rollback feature that you can use in cITopus to roll back your existing environment to a previous environment. Then we'll deploy it again. So rollback feature allows a previously deployed configuration to be completely rolled back from NSX-T environment. Rollback is built for a reason. We built this capability to make sure if something we don't like after the migration, we want that environment to be exactly the way it was before the migration even started. So for this particular use case, when we are looking into our NSX-T environment, we are performing the rollback. I want to show you live how the rollback actually works. So as you can see, all the rules that we had before are already taken out. removed. All the security groups I had before are gone. All the additional services I had before will also be deleted from the cITopus environment. These services are from the global manager, so they remain. So my micro-segmentation view is very simple now because it only has the default section on the NSX-T. So when you import, and I mentioned to you that this file that was exported before, I'm importing into the NSX-T environment. When I import it, what happens is I select the file and I enter the password. Yep. And this file will be imported. It will be converted into the cITopus environment, and then you will have an opportunity to deploy that configuration into the NSX-T. So cITopus acts as a staging platform to help you validate the information and make some manipulations if needed, some changes needed, and finally you will go and deploy that environment into the cITopus. So I will close this demonstration at this point because you have already seen the pre-migration analyzer, how the migration will work. And I do really appreciate you tuning in to this presentation. Please feel free to send me a note or email, spati@spjsolutions.com, for any questions or comments or feedback you may have. Thank you very much for your time today.